So,
Szabas, Sabash.
so Sabash was the name of the town in southern
Little
Hungary.
teeny tiny speck of a town.
What do you remember about that town, and do you know how long you were there?
Oh, we weren't there long at all. It was a short period of time. We were sent down there through my dad because of the bombings in Budapest, and so he made arrangements for us to go out in the country to a little place, just a few homes.
Do you remember what time of year this was, or approximate
Yeah.
You
date?
said it was very
This
cold.
is about, well, by this time, no, actually, it was nice and warm. This is in southern Hungary, and this is a farmhouse, and they had plum trees and other fruit trees in their backyard, and I remember I'd never seen a fruit tree or plum tree, and I remember climbing it and eating these beautiful ripe plums, and I got so sick. I had to run to the bed practically every 10 minutes. So I had a tummy ache like never had such beauty. It tasted like honey. But anyway, so we were there. I don't know how many days, but it was a short period of time. And it was really good, like an R&R stop, because my mother, I'm sure, was stressed with myself, having responsibility for me and for my two brothers, no, my two sisters. And so she asked the farmer if she could take 2 or 3 of their little ducklings and put them in the bathtub and give them a bubble bath and so on. And they said, oh yeah, that'd be fine.
Which sister was that?
Well, this is my mother.
Oh, your mother. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
this was my mother. You had to have some kind of fun and enjoyment, in these troubled times. But anyway, so we were there just a very short time. I climbed the plum tree, ate the plums as much as I could, and then after I had the runs for the next 3 days. It was awful. But anyway, by miracle, this one particular day, up pulls a big, huge Mercedes-Benz, and that was huge. And they had submachine guns. These 2 soldiers had submachine guns, and they asked for is Madame Tomasi here? And she says, yes, I am. You children too? Yes. And as it turned out, they had been ordered to go and pick somebody else up in eastern Hungary, but by that time it was overrun by the Russians. So they decided, since they were going back to Budapest, they might as well stop and pick us up on the way back to the city. So anyway, we just got together and leave everything that we're leaving because it was time sensitive. So we got in the car, drove up to Budapest. As I recall, got together with grandmother and grandfather, maternal, paternal grandparents, with my dad. And then the question was, the issue was the Russians are coming, and they're going to occupy Hungary and Budapest. So therefore, do you want to stay or do you want to leave? My grandparents on the maternal side said, no, we're too old, we're not going to go anywhere, we're going to stay, regardless of, until the war comes to an end. My paternal grandparents, my father's parents, I should say, decided otherwise. We'll go with you and we'll leave Hungary. So from there, from Budapest, we went to the Austrian border to a small town called Velem, Velem, and somehow or other somebody made arrangements for us to stay at a farmer's house, and we stayed there until pretty much the end of, for the rest of the war, or the days of the war. Now I need to clarify something. We were there and we knew that our destination was to leave Hungary from there.
Hmm.
And then the day came where we were told to go down to the railroad station and we would be leaving the following morning on a train to Germany. Well, my paternal grandfather and grandmother were with us. Okay, they did not want to stay in Hungary. They decided to go with my mother and the kids, my brothers and my sisters. And that evening, the night before, that we were supposed to go to the railroad station, where the train was, this special train was going to take us to Germany. My grandfather committed suicide in bed. And it was kind of odd because one of the things that he asked for was a string. Then he also asked for a pencil. And so what he did after he went to bed, he garroted himself. Okay. So following morning, getting up in the morning to go down to the railroad station on time, Grandpa was dead already. Well, what are we going to do now? Can we leave him there or what? Of course, this is 1944, 45. I was only 7, 8 years old, so I really didn't know, other than what I could absorb, osmosis, I guess, more than anything else. So, in a big hurry, somebody called the church and arranged for a funeral. No, not a funeral, well, a burial down to the cemetery. And I was the pallbearer in, what did that mean to me, at age 7 or 8? Well, I was the first one to carry this thing. So we walked down to the cemetery, and they put grandfather in his grave, and there was Quick Lake. And then from there we went to the railroad station, which was already waiting at the station to take us into Austria. And so that's what we did. And when we got to the railroad station, there were just throngs and throngs of people, especially women. They were crying and screaming, take me, it's just chaos. They knew about the Russian atrocities and what the Russians did to the women. And so the women were truly, truly in a desperate situation. But, they were all crying, take me, let me get on the train. Well, I don't know how many did, how many didn't, but anyway, that was the day we left the place, and it was Kőszeg, K-O-S-Z-E-G, Kőszeg, which means stone and nail, Kőszeg. So the train took off, leaving all of these hundreds and hundreds of people, as I say, mostly women, because the men were in the military.
Yeah.
So you had women and children who also wanted to leave, but you didn't have enough cars, no arrangements were made for everybody. But this was, for special people who had some influence or who were in the castle in Budapest, who were in a war room. Okay, that's where the military headquarters were.
Well, and I'd like to just pause for a minute because the town Velem was actually the secret hideaway for the Szálasi government. And in the final stages of the war, Szálasi and his government were actually in Velem.
I didn't know that.
Fascist?
Yeah.
It was fascist, yeah. Yeah. I never saw any of them. This was just a farmhouse, and a gated farmhouse with anyway, I could go into all kinds of details and keep you here for hours and if not days.
Well, and what do you remember? I mean, I remember one time you telling me a story that, and I don't know if it was in Velem, that you said that a plane, American plane, had come down.
Oh. Hmm. Yeah. We were there for a few days after we had gotten from Budapest, or from southern Hungary to Budapest, said goodbye to my maternal grandparents and asked them if they would like, please come with us to the west, to Germany. And they said, no, we're too old for that.
And Geza was still with them at that time.
No, Geza had disappeared
He
by
had
that
disappeared,
time. Yeah,
okay.
they picked him up on the sidewalk and that was it. No, they said, you're too old for that. We're, you know. So, what was your question again?
About the American plane. I remember you
Oh,
telling me
okay,
about
Right. Okay, so we once we got into initially when we first got into Velem, um, you know, as any little boy or girl, you know, you're curious and you want to explore. So I explored, and you know, the town and so on and so forth, and I'm losing my thought.
so you were exploring the town. This is about the American plane.
Oh, okay, okay. And then the house next door, or maybe two doors or two houses down, there was a young man a few years older than I was. Maybe he was 10 or 11 or so. He was going out to, he was herding sheep. So he said, would you like to come out? And so I tagged along and we went out in the meadows and sat there and we were watching the bombers flying overhead. And they were just like little silver stars by the hundreds, one wave after wave after wave. They, honest to God, they looked like little stars. And they had this humming like, whoa, 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 whoa. And all you had to do was just look up and you know that they were up there and you could see them. They were just like little tiny little silver specks, and then one wave would come. And then after that, wave after wave. Later on, after we came to this country, I did some research, and these planes were dispatched from North Africa, to bomb the Ploiești oil fields in Romania, and then those, and I suppose part of them continued on to Europe, maybe to England, to whatever. But anyway, I'm losing my train
You
of
were
There's
boy.
so you were the shepherd boy, and
Yeah, he and I got
boring.
together, and then we watched the sheep and so on, and maybe it was not for a long time, couple 3 days maybe, and watching overhead the airplanes and all, and after that came.
So did you remember? So were you with him when you heard about the plane crash, the American plane crash?
I was with him. Yes, we were. Yeah, he and I were out in the field, and you could just see these little blinking stars coming, wave after wave after wave. We saw something coming down, and it looked like a big flat floating balloon. And it was an auxiliary gas tank that the airplane